I've just finished 10 days of an intensive filmmaking festival. It's called Kino D, and it's an international movement of filmmakers independent filmmakers who started in Canada, I think, about 10 years ago, and people frustrated about getting funding and all that kind of thing got together and just formed a collaborative movement whereby everybody just made films, not excuses, which is the theme of it. And it's become a kind of an international movement now, and it's come to Dublin, and the last 10 days were spent doing that. And it was just an incredible experience for me and made me feel more alive than I have been in a long time, which is saying something. So I could come out with a lot of superlatives about it, but one of the reasons I want to make this video is because I just feel so strange having gone through it and now coming to the after effect, which is, I suppose, a coming down and a little bit of a, they call it the Kino blues, so it's another word for actual crushing depression that you have to go back to the real life. And one of the aspects of it was, it got me thinking about a lot of things about myself, because it touched on so many aspects of my character, so many challenges that I have in life, but also some of the things that I get the most out of. So I thought there's a lot of thoughts knocking about there, and it might do me a lot of good to just speak them out and rationalize them. And I find with a camera on me, I think much better and more succinctly, and I'm able to rationalize things out. And speaking to myself, however insane that may be, is actually quite a therapeutic, not just therapeutic because I don't want to pathologize what this is, but a way of unleashing the positive aspects as well, because there are a lot of positives. There's a lot of excuse me, a lot of emotions and a lot of positivity kind of flooding through me, and it's like I'm on speed a little bit and been through a very intense experience. So just trying to distill it would be an interesting thing to do. So here it goes. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this Kino thing, it's a utterly fantastic experience. So it started 10 days ago, so Friday, runs from Friday to the following Sunday week, so 10 days of it. And it probably encapsulates everything I love, because it's creativity, but it's also people combining together in a kind of collaborative spirit to take a creative idea, to pluck it from the sky and then try and make it real. And it's one of the most magical things to see something, a thought that I might have had many years ago, sometimes in a particular incident, and now it's manifesting itself. People are actually speaking those words that I've written maybe a couple of years ago and making it alive, whether it's a music video or of a song I've written or a film that we're creating out of certain emotions and ideas that I've had over the years. And to see that is certainly, it's incredible, and that's why it's so inspiring, and I felt on fire. And that's the first thing I suppose I'd like to go into, is that I suppose I had an incredible feeling of energy and momentum and being on fire that I haven't felt in a long time, and I suppose everybody can identify it. When you have a day job, it's banal, it can be, every office job to a certain extent is unrewarding to an extent, and is naturally not going to set your world on fire, regardless of what you're doing, really. And that's one of the nice things about Kino, is that it's a voluntary kind of thing of people coming from all over the world to work together to produce art, and there's no money involved. You know, it takes the money out of it, and of course that obviously gives limitations, because you know, people are used to seeing films like Oppenheimer that cost €50 million to produce, so obviously you have to scale things back. But it's just about people expressing their ideas and and making the most of just the raw talent that you have around you. But I felt an amazing rush of energy. And for that 10 days, I got a fraction of the amount of sleep that I normally have. So that's another aspect that it touched on my life, because sleep is something that kind of troubles me and has troubled me for many years, basically all my life. I can never get enough of it. And particularly when I'm depressed, if I don't have work or anything to get up for, I find it very difficult to get up, and I always have. And I find morning times quite difficult, and that's always been the case. So, but during this 10 days, I was able to get 4 hours sleep quite a lot of the nights, and I would get up sometimes at 7 in the morning after 4 hours sleep, sometimes even less, and have a sense of enthusiasm and drive that I wouldn't have had for years. And that unlocked something really that I hadn't felt in a long time. And it kind of recalled what somebody had said. I heard somebody say, sometimes people come out with nuggets of beautiful advice, and somebody said, if you can work at something for 12 hours a day and be quite happy, then it's not work anymore. And that's very true. It's a sign that maybe that's what you should be doing in your life. And I certainly, that 10 days past the test, I was able to go full out. Really, looking back now, probably going from 9 in the morning to sometimes 3 at night, 3 in the next morning. So maybe coming back then and getting one night was 4 hours sleep, but about that for 10 days. And I don't feel like I crashed at the end of it. I feel a little bit tired, and it's kind of confirms to me that I don't need that much sleep, and I certainly don't need the amount of sleep that I do get normally. But yeah, so the positive aspects, just I felt this rush of creativity, of fun, of joy, of connection with people, and of course there was a social aspect as well. So once the filming day was over, there was screenings, and then afterwards we would go to the pub and we did karaoke, and in 2 different places, and there was a nightclub and all this kind of thing, and that was just great fun as well. It's been a long time since I've had that much fun with people that I naturally gelled with. But yeah, so my role in it was normally I suppose my role is writer director. So I write lots of scripts. I've been writing for years, probably since I was 10 years of age. I've been writing things, ideas, diaries, stuff like this, poetry, songs, been writing songs and all this kind of thing. So my role is writer director. So I write the stuff and then I direct the short films when we make them, and sometimes act as well. So I did get to act in this Kino Festival as well, which was a massive buzz too, because it's a luxury where you step out of your life, you put on a new costume and you become somebody else for a day, an entire day. I became an assassin, and it was a really subtly well done film, well produced, beautifully lit, kind of noir style film where we were just 2 cool dudes doing this power play between each other, and that was a massive buzz, massive rush. So yeah, so I had an amazing rush of energy. I was able to sleep a lot less and not feel tired, and it just proved to me that you don't need an awful lot of sleep in order to, sometimes it's paradoxical, less sleep can mean more energy. It's weird that sleep can consume your energy, but quite often maybe you're not. This model we have of sleeping in an inactive mode isn't terribly accurate. It's maybe you're very conscious, caught up with your unconscious thoughts and processing all that, and you go through a bit of trauma when you sleep, and that's why it consumes a lot of energy, and particularly if you oversleep. So yeah, it was a massive buzz. I felt really alive, particularly because things went well as well. I mean, it doesn't always, and I've been doing this for 7 years now, on and off, so it happens once a year, sometimes more. And I felt at the same time, the very first time I did it, this Kino Filmmaking Festival, it was that was 7 years ago, my very first time getting into it, and I was the same. I was working flat out until 3 in the morning, coming back and then getting a couple of hours sleep, and then going back in with a gusto, just wanting more, which is one of the few times when I feel like that, when I have the creativity just unleashes a massive amount of energy and joy. And that's what happened again for 10 full days in this time. So those 10 full days were split up into 3 sessions. So session 1, I made 2 comedies, and part of it is you have to interact and build a team. Well, before you do that, you have to make a pitch, and again, this touches on another aspect, which is my anxiety, which I've discovered or discussed on this channel quite a bit. So I do have this anxiety, which a lot of people have, but so standing up in front of people and pitching an idea touches on so many aspects of anxiety. A lot of people find that challenging. Now, I do it quite a bit, partly because I don't allow myself give in to that negative energy that says just sit down and be quiet. I never want to give in to that, and I push myself, and I probably speak in public more than most people. I mean, yeah, so that's the very first thing you have to do. Well, the very first thing you have to do is come up with an idea, and then have all of that, plug out all of that self-criticism that says this idea is not worthy of developing a team, because that idea can go through your head sometimes too. So you have to pitch with the idea that yes, this idea is worthy, and that people will want to come together and will want to generate a team and realize this. So doing that is, and again, I suppose it was a bit of a surprise to me that after all the years that I've given talks, I've stood up in front of people, and I've pitched ideas and done all this, that after all of those years, that anxiety hasn't gone away. It hasn't reduced even. And the most gut-wrenching aspect of it is those hours beforehand, an hour or 2 beforehand, and waiting and counting down, especially because in this thing it's very informal, so they don't give a list of who's up next. It's really just you're randomly either called or you push yourself forward. So I'm pushing myself into the lion's den, where I know this is going to be a gut-wrenching, quite anxious thing for me to do, or for anybody to do really, I shouldn't underplay it, to stand up in front of people and pitch anyway. A lot of people find difficult, but to also have the confidence that this is something that's worthy of being made, and it's worthy of attracting the highest talent that's in the room and putting them together and clicking, and that it'll come out well. And I have a track record, and I have done so many things now which have worked out well, that makes it easier to do. But usually you go empty-handed. You're just standing in front of people naked of, not literally, but you don't have a CV or anything. You're appealing to people purely on the basis of an idea. Usually these people have never met you before. They could be from Israel or Russia, or so many of the other countries like Germany and Italy that people come from, or the States. So yeah, nearly bumped there. So that was the first thing, yeah. So anxiety, and that there was a ball of energy through the week. So anxiety definitely was part of it. There was a lot of anxious moments where I had to either get up and pitch, so to light the fire under the thing, and then at the other end I had to get up and present and say this is what we did, and then screen the film. So you're kind of hanging yourself out naked in front of people, sometimes with very emotional stuff, which sometimes are very personal stuff, and So there was a lot of anxiety. So that was another factor to the weekend. Anxiety definitely was there. Without it, I'd be dead. I wouldn't be moving. I mean, anxiety to an extent is what pushes us to get out of bed in the morning and to actually do anything. So it's it's just part of life. So, but it quite difficult. I found that quite difficult, and that sapped a lot of my energy. Not a huge amount of it. I still had enough energy to do other things. And then, so that was the screening, and we screened in the Irish Film Institute, the IFI, which is the centre of film in all of Ireland, which was a real honour. And to screen any film that you've made there is a real honour as well. So, and this would be something that you've made in a day. So, like you have to manage the expectations there in regards to what you can do, but it's not necessarily about. It's not about money. It's not about budget. It's about just raw creativity and trying to harness the talents of the people around you. So people who are good at camera, sound, lighting, acting, and music around you, and just trying to distill those talents and put them together and create a bit of magic. So that was session 1. I've made 2 comedies. Session 2 was a big moment for me, and probably the highlight. And that was to make another music video. So I made a music video last year, which was a huge success. Really delighted with it. It was called The Residence Bar, and it won an award. And the gods came together in terms of this collaborative movement, because when I pitched the idea, people just gravitated towards it, and everybody wanted to be in. And I was delighted, and we just seemed to get the best of everything in terms of camera and in terms of the actor, Natasha, who walked around in a wedding dress for a day. And it just all clicked together. It was just a beautiful day. I mean, I had this vision that the end would be at sunset on a beach, and that she would throw a bouquet of flowers over her head and land in the water. And, I thought, look, it's an ideal, but it'll probably never happen. And it'd be a drone shot of it. And then I found myself at the end of the day walking onto the beach, and I realised, I looked around and it was sunset, and I thought, this is like a dream that I had in my head, and now it's crystallising, it's becoming real. And that is a real buzz, and everything about that went so well. The drone shots and all that kind of thing, and the emotion, and it was quirky, and it looked beautiful, and everything about it just was a dream. So I wanted to make something similar, and so this time I wrote another song called The Face That Launched 1,000 Ships. And I got 2 actors, Liat Kisos from Israel and Liam Hall Walsh, lovely guy from Mullingar. And the idea in my head was that this woman would be walking down the street and catch the eye of a guy that she fancied in front of her, and they would both kind of catch the eye of the person and maybe look away a little bit and flirt a little bit from a distance, and then walk by each other and just brush by each other and just slightly connect, and that would set off a little bit of magic, and then into a dream where they would spend the perfect day together, and then at the end she would be walking down the street, and she's got the smile on her face as she's dreaming about this day, and then look up and realize he's not there. He's invisible. He never existed. So that was the idea, and it worked out beautifully. The music or the music video. So, and it was just it seemed to just all crystallize as I imagined it. Still have to create the music for it, but even though, on the night then we had to perform. The idea is in the silent session of the session 2 that you perform the music in front of the silent video behind you, and that we performed it. So that was Layla on guitar, Liat was singing, and I was doing some singing as well in the background, and that went really well. But now we have to kind of properly record it and put it to the music video, and I'm hoping that maybe it'll be a step above from last year. So that was a real buzz, and that shooting day was really good. Now, what people don't probably realize is, and I underestimated myself, is the iceberg in terms of the amount of work that goes in to preparing ahead of actually going down onto that beach and recording. I mean, so I went down during the day just to see the tides, because I realized in Sea Point it's very much dependent on the tides. Normally in Sea Point, when I'm going swimming, which I am now, I'm off for a swim, we want the tide in, we want as much water near you as possible. And but this time I wanted the opposite. I wanted a bit of beach so that these people could play around on the beach. They weren't going to go in swimming as such. They wanted to just play around on the beach. So parking time, and so just all of that preparation, the production side of things, and that's another aspect to this Kino thing, which it's stressful and happily part. So and that's another aspect. So I talked about the buzz, the energy, talked about anxiety, but now stress. So stress was a feature of that 10 days. And I don't know whether it's positive stress, which I think they call eustress, or negative stress, which I think they just call stress. But yeah, in order to make anything like that, I mean, it's a mini project, really. And if you're pitching the idea, really, I mean, in a real film, if you were to make it with a massive budget, like 10 million euro budget, then you'll have a production manager and you'll have about 50 people working to produce it. You'll have a first assistant director who's a schedule of all of the shots, and second assistant director who's shepherding all the people. You'll have a production designer. You'll have a producer who's got an entire trailer full of people and schedules and clipboards and all this kind of thing. In this case, it's just me. So like, it's a one-man band with tapes hanging out of me and tape measures and sticks, which props and clipboards and, you know, scripts stuffed in my back pocket and guitar slinged over my neck because that's needed later. And it's in these kind of situations, I'm probably doing 10 roles that would be done normally on a film set. So like the writer, the director, the producer, the first AD, script supervisor, sometimes I'm doing camera, and then at the other end, I mean, a big chunk of the iceberg, editing the damn thing in a very tight time frame, and then publicist, because you have to make sure that, you know, the moment isn't lost if you're putting all that effort in. And then I suppose very important thing is making everybody feel like part of a team. It's difficult to put a word on that, but that's one of the most important things, because if it's done, quite a lot of these things are done and the humans are ignored, you know, and people feel, and that's what leads to problems, people complaining afterwards that they feel underappreciated and all that kind of thing. So even coming out to small things like buying sandwiches and coffee and stuff and saying and telling people you appreciate them, all of that, like, it's, you know, so there's about 10 different roles there, which is great in some ways, because you would never get the opportunity to do that if you're in a big production with a big budget. You're probably a tiny cog in the wheel, maybe third assistant director or something, handling extras or something. But here you're getting, that's one of the beauties of Kino, you're getting a wardrobe is another one. So like, I bought a wedding dress for that film last year, which is an amazing experience. I mean, that gives me a wardrobe credit, I feel, and genuine one. And this time I bought 2 separate dresses for the week, which miraculously fit. But, and all the props. Yeah, so that's another role as well, prop master. But so stress, yeah. So like, all of that on your shoulders, on my shoulders, definitely brought out a feeling of stress in me. So I was going to bed at night knowing the next day I'd kind of perform the impossible. And again, feeding into that kind of thing where I put too much pressure on myself. Maybe everybody does, but having a feeling, have I pushed myself too far? Have I stretched myself too far here? And sometimes I was kind of thinking, yeah, maybe that feeling is actually right. But most of the time up to now, I try and suppress that feeling, and I say, that's the voice that's trying to just hold me back. But I didn't let it hold me back now during these 10 days. So the music video was made. Looks beautiful. We did 2 locations. Last year we were very ambitious and did 5 locations, which was quite a bit. But yeah, so this time we only need 2. So South William Street in the city centre, and then Sea Point Beach for the kind of dream sequence. So that was the music video. That went really well. And then the third one, I had an ambitious idea for a short film. So this time I tried to push it a little bit higher production value, and I booked out a studio. So a nice big kind of warehouse room, because I wanted to make a kind of, I wanted to make something out of my comfort zone. So I'd never really done a gangster type suspense film with that kind of thing before. So I wrote a script where basically everybody dies, you know, as many bodies on the floor as possible, shameless kind of bit of violence, a little bit sexy, kind of, you know, no hidden messages or anything like that, really. But, well, I suppose the Machiavelli was behind it, but yeah, that the book was there. I couldn't resist that. But otherwise, I wanted to make it a kind of pure kind of entertainment and enjoyment. And so I was really excited about that one. Really wanted that to go well. And so put a lot of effort into planning that. And we booked out D-Light Studios. Now that was stressful because it was my first time booking a fairly expensive location. Normally in these situations you kind of wing it and find out whatever's available and work around that. But this time I wanted to level up a little bit and find a location where it wouldn't look cheap, you know, and kind of wanted to make it look like this was a real kind of warehouse, because it is. It's a warehouse. And so what I got was, yeah, it was a lovely place, D-Light Studios, but everything about, again, you have to kind of, because you have to do everything, I had to make all the arrangements with the people, and that kind of broke down a little bit, and there was a lack of communication, so that led to stress. So the night before, I knew I was going into a venue where they hadn't confirmed that we were there, that we had it. And also they'd give me an invoice for twice the amount that I expected. So that was another stress as well. It was expensive enough as it was, but the invoice that they had sent was for twice that amount. So everything, and normally here again was touching those touch points where these things would trigger me. And yeah, and they would, like, in terms of organization, because I'm kind of creative, that tends to be the opposite of an organizational mind, and that's an area that I don't enjoy. I'm not good at organization, about scheduling and booking stuff and making sure everything fits in. That's one of my weaknesses, and I'm quite happy with that, with acknowledging it, because if I have the creative mind, then I'm happy enough to have that strength. And if that's a weakness that comes with it, due to being a kind of complementary skill, I'm fine with that. So that led to an awful lot of stress. I was going to bed knowing that I had to drive into this place, not knowing that if I turned up, that they might say, you're not booked. It's not happening. And then having all of the actors and everybody else that was coming to have to turn around and tell them, well, we don't have the venue, and trying to wing a location or something like that, a nightmare. So going to bed that night was quite stressful, and driving in that day, I was just doing a lot of deep breathing to try and control the stress. So that was a stressful point. And so I walked in, drove in there, and there was other angles as well. I was borrowing sound equipment from a friend, and in order to be fair, I promised her that I'd help her with the sound later on, which I did, which was great. And I'm glad I managed to make good on that, because that could have messed up as well. So there was a huge amount of juggling that day. But anyway, I went into the place, those studios, for 9 o'clock. They had the booking. they actually acknowledged that it was actually double the price, and so it was a huge relief. So that day started with a lot of stress, and then that tailed down. And then on the day, it was quite tight because we had to have it all done by 5 p.m. But we did. We got the script done. Now, I suppose that's a whole separate video on just approach to direction and stuff. And one of the aspects that I hate about filmmaking, I think my theory is that there's an awful lot of bullshit in filmmaking. And a lot of directors who do 100 takes and, keep people, about 10 hours on a single scene. A lot of it is done for just fluffing themselves up, I think, sometimes. And the more you do, the more takes you do, and the more kind of angles you do at that, I mean, you exponentially decrease the volume of material. And then at the other end, as an editor, like the amount of that material that you can possibly cope with or choose and select, and you've now got an n-dimensional hard problem in terms of selecting the optimum shot. It just seems pointless to me, and there's definitely got to be a more sweet spot than the normal way things happen there. So I tend to be more minimalist in that regard, and in fact I was extremely minimalist on this day, where I had a lovely DOP, Monica, who used a gimbal for it, and I wanted it to be kind of handheld and following characters around this kind of room, and it was a big space. I wanted to use it as much as possible and keep it nice and active and real and flowing. And another thing, I believe in the law of diminishing returns as well. I believe we should get everything in the script first, all of the scenes to a certain level first, 80% or whatever it might be, before you go back and try and perfect anything. And I think most filmmakers are the opposite. It's like on scene one, it's just hammering until you're 100%, and nobody ever gets to 100%. So sometimes, scene one should be getting 10% of the time of the day, but after 20% of the time, the director is still battering away on scene one, and that really I find frustrating, and it can't be the right way of doing things. So people find it unusual that way, but it's like not letting perfectionism destroy a result, because it's not really perfectionism if you're consuming time and borrowing time from the future. But that was really enjoyable shoot, out of my comfort zone, doing a totally different genre, kind of darker, more sinister film, which was about kind of two gangsters meeting at a warehouse. Well, four. Two gangster couples meeting at a warehouse. The previous day, which I forgot, I was acting in a film, so just purely acting. So somebody else had written the script, somebody else had directed. And that was interesting because I was able to see, again, this guy who's directing is a very tough taskmaster, and probably the opposite style of director that I am. And initially I thought, is this going to be a little bit too tough and a bit of torture, because it's very intense? But then I thought, this would be a good learning experience for me, to experience the opposite maybe of what I'm used to. And it turned out it was, and it was a great product came out the other end of it. It's I was playing an assassin who meets a politician in his office, and he's arranging for the assassin to assassinate a political rival. And it was a great script, nice bit of intrigue, and we were given the space to really subtly act it. And I think that really worked. It worked out well, so that's very satisfying. Then the last day, a huge amount of the time was taken up by editing. So I was at home battering away on the editing machine on the laptop, trying to hammer out the edit on films, which, again, I have to do everything, and I'm not an expert in any of the roles. And editing is probably something that it would be best for me to outsource and ship it out to somebody else who's better, but that's not always possible. But the highlight of the whole weekend then was something incredible happened, because in the Irish Film Institute, it was the last night of the whole event after 10 nights and 3 sessions. And I was kind of deciding, right, it's time to relax and just, enjoy this. Switch off the stress, the anxiety, all of those touch points that I talked about earlier that had been triggered by this week. Even all the good things, because that was kind of making me a bit too buzzed. And there were times when it was brilliant and it was amazing and creative and there was a buzz, but I was being pushed. Probably my mind was being pushed too much. It was on too much, and I probably needed to back it off a little bit. So I was sitting there in the theatre, and while the organisers, were getting the laptop to work to screen the films. And the laptop didn't work. It wouldn't screen. And this is the top sort of film centre in Ireland, and probably one of the best cinemas there. And for whatever reason, the equipment, which happens, it always does, it wouldn't work. So I thought my first reaction was, okay, well, I'll just sit here and wait for it. But then Kate comes up to me, one of the organisers, and she says, Fergus, I need you to entertain the crowd here for an hour. And there was no time to think about it. So I got up and, I was thinking about it afterwards. If somebody had told me, no, next week, Fergus, you will have to entertain a group of 100 filmmakers who've come from all over the world, and you'll have to entertain them for an hour, I would have spent the week stewing on it. And probably the day of the event, I've been spending 2 or 3 hours just going, what the hell did I agree to? How am I going to do this? But because I was given no notice, it actually made it much easier. So I just got up and I thought, I'm going to wing it here. And it turned out to be one of my most enjoyable, kind of proudest moments that I've had in a long time, because I kind of dug deep into myself and decided I was going to just let my fun side out, and a part of me that really enjoys that kind of thing. So I sang a few songs, got people in the crowd to join in. Happily, they knew these Oasis songs, which are fairly universal, thankfully. But and then invited people up to do kind of various bits of comedy, kind of compared a kind of little bit of a crazy, spur of the moment cabaret little event. I knew there was enough talent in the room to kind of squeeze it all together, but one of the most surreal moments was, I think somebody shouted, why don't you do an Irish song? And the very first song that came into my head was Camochi Black and Tans, which is an Irish rebel song. And I just sang that. So I found myself, I was just imagining if I was, the 20-year-old me looking at this moment in time, here in the centre of the Irish film with an international audience, and singing Camochi Black and Tans to them. And as it turned out, because it was kind of collaboration of different cabaret acts and all this kind of thing, there was a Brazilian belly dancer who was dancing with hula hoops beside me as I sang this Irish rebel song. And that must have been one of the most surreal moments of my entire life. But everybody was clapping along and cheering, and that was a buzz that I so much enjoyed. And it kind of released an energy in me that's been pent up there and for a long time. I like performing. Even though it is difficult and it's stressful, I like it. It's in me and I like to get it out. Whether it's just getting a song out, or a bit of comedy, or some sort of entertainment. And people were coming up saying that I was a great singer, and I really love to hear that, because it's such a subjective thing that you never know. But the interesting thing was, we sang so many different songs like Coldplay and Oasis and things, but the foreign people that were coming up to me were going, oh, I really love that song. And I said, well, was it the Oasis one? They said, no, it was that Irish one that you sang. It's just such a bizarre, surreal moment. And a real highlight to go out on. And what I love about it is that I have all those memories forever. Like, film lasts forever. And I mean, I will, as time goes by, I'll hopefully progress and you know, the quality will be much better. And God, if I have a budget someday, the quality will be orders of magnitude higher. But for films that are produced on the spur of the moment, really, with a script that has to be knocked together quite quickly, where casting is done on the blink in 5 minutes with whoever's in the room, with maybe amount of time for shooting it being an hour or two or a couple of hours, maybe an afternoon, you know, the results are kind of inspiring, and they plant a seed for something that, you know, for the future, or they're satisfying enough in their own right as a moment in time when you capture a feeling and inspiration, a moment of creativity, which sometimes is growing out of a seed that was in my mind 5 years ago. So I'm very proud of it, and so many different emotions just going through me that I'm glad to just get it all out here. You know, so stress, anxiety, but positive things like massive flow of energy coming out of me. A tap was open for energy, you know, minimalist sleeping, not oversleeping, minimalist amount of sleeping, squeezing that energy out. And I didn't feel any depression for that week as well, which is interesting, because even with a very small lack of sleep, I felt anxiety, certainly, but no depression, not a moment of it, which is interesting. I don't know why that is, because, well, I suppose it's just because I had a purpose. I was doing what I loved. I was getting creativity out of me, which was lighting a fire in me. I had adrenaline. All that positive stuff was going through. And then just meeting fascinating people, absolutely fascinating. Another aspect, which I had just forgotten, but one of the German, or she's Russian, I think, one of the Russian participants came up to me and said, would you like to beatbox for this? And I'd never beatboxed ever before, but I got up on the stage with her and she did a rap and I beatboxed to it, and it was that was a real moment as well. Absolutely fantastic. Where it's kind of punk style, you know, where it's just get up and do it. Don't spend a lifetime planning and doing production meetings about it, and just go up and do it, punk style. And because so much of life, particularly in the arts, you know, people say, oh, I'm writing a book, and 10 years later you never see it, you never see even a hint of it. Or people say I'd like to produce a film, or I'd like to produce a song. And you know, quite often, and not due to a fault of those people, but many people, they're never realized, they never get out there. Quite often the fault is perfectionism. They say, I cannot release this until it's perfect. And if that bar is too high, then it'll never be released. And then you don't have a foundation that's out there to improve. Like, what I love now is that music video which won the award is now a foundation stone, it's like a calling card when I want to make another music video, which happened this year. All I had to do was send out that music video and say, look, this is what I've made already. I'd like to make something better. So, yeah, let's go, let's do it. I know we can do this. So it's nice because, and everything should be progressive. Just build on what you've done before, rather than waiting for 10 years to produce something amazing. And I know some people do it, like Aftersun, the director, it was her first film and she took 10 years to make it, I think. Now that's an explosion of genius, which is rare, all too rare though, to risk. So now, I suppose the other aspect that people call the Kino blues, I did not really get that much, and I'm surprised that they talk about the Kino blues so that you're on this rush of adrenaline and energy and creativity, and then when it stops, you have to go back to reality. And I really felt I would have that because I had to go back to work. I took the week off work, and then at the end of it, I have to go back to work. But happily, I haven't had that crushing feeling, which is great. It's kind of like the buzz has stayed with me. Now, partly as well because some of the projects are still going. Like the Machiavelli film that I made, I still haven't edited that, so I'll edit it. I'm kind of excited. I think something good come out of that. And also the music video, still the music has to be made for it. There's a journey to be gone there. And I'm going to send all various stuff off to film festivals, so they'll have a life for many years to come. So it's not over, really. And I've made lots of friends and contacts and all over the world, and who knows, please God, maybe I'll see them at future events. So there hasn't been a crushing down feeling. I mean, I'm here now going for a swim. It's Wednesday, so it all finished Sunday night, and I still feel the buzz, still feel the glow, and I'm just so glad, I'm so grateful for the experience. It's a beautiful movement, and particularly because there's no money involved, and I think whatever you're into, there's probably an equivalent movement where people from around the world come together and just enjoy creating something on a collaborative basis, where no one's trying to screw people over or make a quick buck out of it, where it's just purely about creativity and about realizing something beautiful. And this was a thing of beauty, really was, and it still is, and it's still there. So hopefully that's a good recap of all of the emotions and really how it kind of punches into a lot of the touch points of my character, both positive and negative, and whether it influenced and whether it brought good out of me. And it certainly did. It certainly brought good out of me. It triggered some difficult bits, challenges, but then nothing in life that's worth it is without challenges. Fantastic experience. Very grateful. I feel more alive than ever. Thanks for watching this. 45 minutes, I'm amazed, 47. And I'll see you the next time. Godspeed.